By what rationale does the White House now tackle climate change when it's yet to address the major problems that we have with the Veterans Affairs, the recent trade with the Taliban of giving them 5 Taliban leaders for 1 soldier whom all evidence seems to suggest deserted his post? By what rationale do we try to affect something which we have inadequate data for, whenever we have things which we have a ton of data for? It is blatantly obvious that people are not working as much as they want to work. But we have 100 years of data on a over 4 billion year history of the Earth. How do we know which direction the climate is really going whenever we know there are periods in global geological history where carbon levels might go like this and go like this, and then the temperature might correlate, but it's all over the place. Whenever you look at the history of our climate, it is all over the place. How do we know within such a short period of time? 100 years is a second in our geologic history. It is a second. Climatologists know this. They wouldn't be advocating radical shifts in policies. The vast majority of them wouldn't advocate radical shifts in policies for such a small period of data. Would you invest in a company that has existed for 100 years if they'll only provide you 1 year of data on that company? Would you be able to know what choice is in your best interest? Maybe they grew this year, but is that growth coming off of a very, very long trend of no growth? Is that growth coming from off of a long trend of them going in a downward spiral? You see 1 year and you see a little pop, like a little, starts to go up a little bit. But could it then be going back down? How would you know? You wouldn't have the knowledge. If you don't have enough data to make a policy decision, then it would be wise to try to find ways to get more data on this and to try to get your evidence to be much more conclusive on the overall direction for the future, to make a very, very quality forecast, have quality scientific forecasts that are conclusive with each other over a span of at least a decade, and so the vast majority being very, very consistent, not just the ones that the U.S. government releases, not just the ones that they commission. Look at all of the studies, regardless of who commissioned it, because there is a bias regardless of whom commissions it, but bias is not seen as much in scientific literature as it is seen in political literature. Any literature that covers politics, whether it's clear bias like MSNBC and their liberal bias and Fox News and their tilt towards conservatism, or whether it's more subtle bias, CNN or ABC. So the bias, whenever it's not really apparent, it often exists in what they choose to cover. So, for the vast majority of Obama's scandals, everyone else was just acting like, these people are just nuts. They're just saying everything's a scandal, They're just saying the Obama administration lying about a terrorist attack that happened on a U.S. embassy that affected the lives of people in the State Department, people who weren't adequately protected despite asking for that protection. Whenever you have a scandal like that and everyone's like, nah, it's Fox News, they're just making this up, I don't get what Obama said. It's a YouTube video. Who cares that it wasn't a YouTube video? What's the honesty of the president matter if I voted for him? That type of mentality makes no sense, and it's not a healthy mentality for an informed democracy, and it's not a healthy mentality to get good policy making. I mean, you wonder why we have such horrific policy making. Has a lot to do with the blatant party devotion and partisanship where it's like, well, as long as my party offered it up, it must be good. You don't have to hate a political party to be able to openly analyze and question their policies, and to study from both ends, study both the free market economists and the more Keynesian economists. You look at both perspectives and you kind of read the analysis of both and just kind of see whose evidence and whose argument seems to really hold water. Who's making predictions that are coming true? Who predicted the 2008 financial crisis, right? Was it Keynesians? No. Not saying that means they're always wrong, but in this clear instance, it wasn't them who predicted the 2008 financial crisis. They might have hinted that something that might happen, within whenever it was coming to be, like within a year of it actually happening, right? But then there were free market economists who understand that you should be free to make your own choices in the economy, who were predicting that this thing was going to happen, and they saw it happening a few years in advance, right? They saw the tech bubble. Yeah, it would be smarter to make a determination based off of more evidence and not just have a party loyalty and just believe that they're always going to be right, because they're not going to be always right, right? And there's no, Senator Paul once said, there's no monopoly on intelligence in Congress. Something to that effect. Basically the idea that it's not like these people are the cream of the crop. They aren't. They are clearly not cream of the crop whenever it comes to policy making. Some of them are. Some of them might have been top in their class, Some of them might have been a really great problem solver, whether in business or in public sector elsewhere. A good problem solver looks at something, people say, oh, well, this is a huge problem, and they're like, oh yeah, I see how it's a problem. They come up with a solution outside the box, and bam. You know what isn't a solution outside of the box? The same solution that we've been hearing, my whole life, but started, back with FDR, that the government can solve all the problems if we throw a lot of money at it, and then people will do it. But it doesn't work that way, because you extract that money from people who are already making the money. So it's a broken window fallacy in the sense that you're taking the money you can see get transferred, government to people, rather than looking at, well, government takes the money from the people first, it confiscates the money from the people, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. I'd argue that taxation's involuntary. They confiscate this money from the people, and then they pick the winners and losers in the economy. Then they say, oh, well, who do we think should get the money? Rather than letting the people decide with their dollars, which are votes, essentially, what companies should be successful, what charities are doing a good job, what type of associations they want to promote, what organizations do they want to promote. That's people-driven democracy. And instead, we have a federal entity which thinks it knows everything, that actually thinks that it's smarter than us. Which, I guarantee you, if I got into a conversation with most of them, I could probably make them understand that this determination isn't done in a very intellectual manner, and that perhaps they need more data on who we the people are. Maybe if they got that data, read through some of the NSA logs, they have enough of it, that they might understand that there's actually a lot of people in our country who are way smarter and have a way broader knowledge base than what they do. Just a fact, actually. Because I know, because I've talked to plenty of people around university, but then also outside of university, and they have a clear understanding of what's going on and how the government does harm the economy whenever it extracts a lot of people's money, creates hundreds of thousands of lines of rules that people can't have to obey, or they're not allowed to make money. They're not allowed to give people a product in return for currency. That's absurd that those rules would exist. It's just, they're not even smart rules. And there's a quote to the effect of, a wise man explain big ideas in few words, and a dumb man explains small ideas in many. Does the legislation that we see come out of D.C. represent? Does it represent wise ideas in few words, or foolish ideas in many? And I'd say foolish ideas in many. Thank you. On Twitter, @PeaceAndPowers. Check out my website, blog.makelifebetter.me, where I talk a lot about the corruption of the Obama administration through things like his war on whistleblowers, where he uses the draconian 1917 Espionage Act against them. But then there's some other stuff there too. I think you'll like it. Alright, bye.